everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, you're checking out a Stamina Nightblade 1-bar solo PVE build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Yes, finally a 1-bar Stamina Nightblade. I've been listening to your comments. I've been reading them. I know this is something that you wanted to check out. And this build really does work. Of course, I will have options for using both bars if you want to increase the damage. But even just on the 1-bar setup, we have great survivability, great healing, really strong damage, and it's just easy and it's fun to play. So I think you'll enjoy this build. We'll talk about the stats, we'll talk about gear set options, we'll look at skills, champion points, I'll cover the outfit style towards the end, and then we'll have some gameplay, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Finally, a 1-bar setup for the Stamina Nightblade. Here we go. Alright, so here we are back on the Stamina Nightblade 1-bar setup, and with some options for 2 bars. I'll be showing those towards the end, as well as some gameplay. Keep in mind, though, of course, this is just a solo build. It's meant for soloing around dungeons, world bosses, things like that. So it's not a min-max DPS build at all. We'll be talking about survivability, healing, damage shields, everything you need to be able to solo in Elder Scrolls Online. So let's jump into the stats first of all with our potion. We have about 16k max magicka, about 20k max health, 32k maximum stamina, 600 magicka recovery, 1000 health recovery, about 850 stamina recovery, weapon damage, almost 5k weapon damage. I'll talk about some options for increasing that further as well. Almost 60% weapon critical, so that's very good for soloing. Let's see, I can't show you the full resistances right now, but those are about 18k spell and physical once we have our shadow buff procced. Of course, 64 points into max stamina. Since we are a Stamina Nightblade, Minor Berserk, we'll talk about how we get that. The Thief Mundus Stone, I just wanted a little bit higher critical. You can run weapon damage here if you want. You can run the Shadow Mundus. Basically up to you there. Bewitched Sugar Skulls, that's going to be the best in-slot food for this. Gives you tons of max stats, which are great for soloing. Plus the extra health recovery, which is very nice for healing. In terms of the potion, you just have the Weapon Power Potion, so weapon damage, weapon critical. All you really need, honestly, is the weapon critical, and you could probably even drop that if you want to just run trash stamina potions for a while. That's totally fine. There's also the weapon crit potions, which give you health and weapon critical as well as stamina. Those are really good, but you do have to craft those. Now, in terms of the race, I decided just to go with Orc for the extra damage and healing potential here. So 2000 max stamina on the Orc passive. 1000 max health. This is actually really good for soloing. Plus the healing back when you do damage with a weapon ability, also great for solo. And then you do get the bonus weapon damage here. Plus movement speed is nice as well. So all these passives are very good for soloing. I do recommend the Orc. If you want another good damaging race, Dark Elf will be good. If you're having any issues sustaining, Red Guard will be excellent for that. Wood Elf is honestly fine. Khajiit is fine. So basically whatever you want to go with here, you can obviously make it work. So that's the basic setup. Let's talk about the item sets next. First 5-piece set we're checking out is going to be New Moon Acolyte. This is just our overall damage set. So we get weapon critical, weapon damage, we get physical penetration, and then 481 weapon damage up 100% of the time. Though we do increase the cost of our active abilities by 5%, really not a huge deal. We're not casting big costly abilities on this setup very much. Most of our costs are pretty low, plus we are running medium armor for the extra cost reduction. So I don't find the 5% to be a big deal. What is nice is just all the extra stats, everything that we need here. Weapon damage, weapon critical, penetration, it's all here. So this is very good. I do recommend Nirnhone for the trait, and then I do recommend crafting a Maul. That's going to be best in slot, in my opinion, for the extra physical penetration that you get from your two-handed passives, which we'll talk about in a minute. In terms of the glyph, I am running just a damage shield enchant here for soloing some tougher world bosses and things like that. The extra 4k damage shield every 10 seconds is going to be nice, so it won't be up all the time, right? Because we're not running infused, we're running Nirnhoned. If you do want more shields and stronger shields, then definitely think about switching to infused as your trait here on the two-hander. But I do like the damage shield enchant. You can run poisons. Double dot poisons would be fine here. or you could run something like a disease or a poison enchant. So that's going to cover our weapon. That covers 2 set pieces, and then we are just running 3 pieces of acolyte on the jewelry. So the necklace and 2 rings here. Infused is the preferred trait with the weapon damage enchant on everything here. So triple infused, triple weapon damage. Again, the sustain really isn't an issue with how I've designed the build, so you can build for max damage here. And that'll be a great way to play the setup. So that covers our damage set. Now, in terms of, resource management, I think this is where you need to think about your Stamina Nightblade. Well, I've been running with a lot of success is the Hunt Leader set. This is from Maelstrom Arena. You can get this on normal or veteran. And it does give you a lot of nice stats. You can see here 2 max stamina bonuses, 1 weapon damage bonus, and then the 5 piece is really interesting. When your pets attack an enemy you've also attacked, you heal for almost 3k health, and you restore about 1200 stamina, and that's every 5 seconds. So I really like this because I think it kind of helps with some of the weak points of the Stamina Nightblade, which is sustain and healing. You get a big boost of health and stamina every 5 seconds as long as you're using a pet. And what pet are we using? Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is a great set both for sustain and for healing. Now, this is a little bit tricky to get. I realize you do need to run Maelstrom, so I'll give you some options for this. But just remember, you can run normal, and then you get the reward at the end of every arena. So you can farm this on normal if you are really interested. Now, if you don't want to go with this set, any other sustain set will be fine. Something like Bone Pirate for the extra stamina sustain will be really strong. You could also use something like Briarheart, which gives you healing on crit damage, plus even extra weapon damage. That's how you can get your weapon damage actually well over 5k. On the setup, you could run Briarheart and get the extra weapon damage and healing. But like I said, just for this particular setup, this gives you a nice balance of healing, sustain, and then damage is coming from our other 5-piece set. So this is what I would recommend if you can get it. If not, think about those other options. So we are going to be a medium armor build for this. So I just have 5 pieces of Hunt Leader on the body. So that's chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet, all divines if you can. Stamina enchants will be your best bet there. Now, in terms of the monster set, I just wanted to push out as much damage as I could here. So I'm running Slimecraw, the good old Slimecraw set from Wayrest Sewers 1. This is pretty easy to pick up. Gives you weapon critical, which is, again, very good on our Stamina Nightblade. And we gain minor berserk at all times, increasing our damage done by 8%. So that's an excellent boost to some of our hard-hitting abilities already. Now, I do prefer to run 2 heavy pieces on this if you can get it. If not, that's fine. You can run, 5-1-1. You could do a light and a heavy. You could do heavy and a medium. But some of the passives that we'll talk about for Stamina Nightblade really benefit from having a few extra heavy pieces. So that's why I have a heavy helmet and a heavy shoulder piece here. Divines, obviously, is going to be the best trait, and then I just left the max health enchants here, so max health on the head, max health on the shoulder. That's going to give us over 20k health, which is really nice in terms of soloing bosses and things like that can hit you pretty hard. So that is the setup. 5 medium, 2 heavy. We've got the Slimecraw head and shoulders. We've got the Hunt Leader on the body, and then New Moon Acolyte on the front bar weapon and jewelry. Now let's go over the 1-bar skill setup that's been really effective for me. Starting off with Power Extraction. Power Extraction is a Stamina Nightblade AoE skill, comes from the Siphoning skill line. That's the last ability that you get, and then Power Extraction is the Stamina Morph. This ability is pretty interesting. It does do pretty strong damage in an AoE circle around you. Once you're fully buffed, and this crits, it can hit very, very hard. Now, you also reduce your enemy's damage by 200 for 8 seconds, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it's not a huge decrease, but it is kind of a nice debuff, and we do have another really strong debuff as well that we're running. And then we do get Major Brutality, so that's that 20% weapon damage bonus. That's why I said if you want to just run basic trash potions on this setup, you can do that because we are in melee range. We're going to have that Major Brutality buff up 100% of the time thanks to this skill. Next up is going to be Brawler. This is kind of the main ability, the main spammable of this build. You can see we do just as much damage as Power Extraction, but we get a huge damage shield. And this increases actually quite a bit. This will increase when you're fully buffed. So based on your weapon power. We see over a 7k shield, and then each enemy you hit increases that shield by 50% up to 300%, so you can get well over your max health with just a single swing of the Brawler ability. Of course, this is from the two-handed skill line. That's the third ability that you get, and Brawler is the preferred morph for the damage shield, so just keep that in mind. All right, next ability, we've got Dark Shade. Dark Shade is from the Shadow skill line. This is the last ability that you get, and you want the Dark Shade morph. What this does is it summons a little shadow version of yourself called a Shade. The Shade slashes at an enemy, it deals magic damage, and it does a Whirlwind AoE attack, so it deals AoE magic damage. And the nice thing about this is the Shade's attacks give the minor maim debuff, so that reduces the enemy's damage done by 15% for 4 seconds. This is an extremely good buff when you're soloing on any class in the game, so I always recommend you look for a skill that can do this. You know, whether it's low slash from the one-handed skill line, other class skills have this debuff attached, but this is a really nice way to solo on the Stamina Nightblade or the Magicka Nightblade. I actually have this on my 1-bar Magicka Nightblade build as well, just for that minor maim debuff because it's so strong. Now, the other nice thing about this is this does count as a pet. So this does work with sets like Hunt Leader, which we got on the body here on this setup. So every time our Dark Shade deals damage, that has the ability to proc the Hunt Leader, giving us that huge influx of both health and stamina back. So healing and resources, so it's a really nice combination, really synergizes well. I definitely recommend that skill. Then we just have some buffs for the rest of the 1-bar setup, so we're running Leeching Strikes as well. This is on the this is from the Siphoning skill line, and you might wonder, well, where's the heal on this build, right? I mean, Hunt Leader gives you a little heal every 5 seconds, but where's the actual heal? And that's coming from Leeching Strikes. You can see your light and heavy attacks heal you for about 1,600 health. They also restore stamina, and fully charged heavy attacks restore twice the value. So we're getting well over 3k for every heavy attack, and this heal can crit. So when this crits, that's over 5k healing on just one of those heals that comes back to you. That's another reason why you want fairly high crit on this build. You want to crit those, and those are very strong heals, basically equivalent to Surge on a Stamina Sorcerer. So it's very strong, and it's something that you would be doing anyways, right? You're going to be light and heavy attacking anyways, so you might as well get some extra healing and sustain. You do get a big chunk of sustain when the buff runs out, so this is just a win-win skill. I do recommend that. And then finally, Relentless Focus is going to be our last normal ability that comes from the Assassination skill line. That's the last ability that you get there. Relentless is the stamina morph. So this has some interesting mechanics. It's a stackable mechanic, meaning that every time you do light or heavy attack damage, you're going to stack up one of these procs from Relentless Focus. Once you get 5 stacks, you can release a Assassin's Scourge bow that does huge burst damage. Now you also have the potential of holding on to the stacks because each stack also gives you 2% damage mitigation. So if you just hang on to those 5 stacks and leave the buff, you're getting extra 10% damage mitigation. So I do recommend that for some really intense fights where you're taking a lot of damage. Just stack it up to 5 and leave it there, because then you have extra damage reduction, right? You've got the extra 10% from Relentless. You've got 15% debuff on the enemy from Dark Shades. You have even a little bit of extra debuff from Power Extraction. So this build, even though it's a medium armor build, it feels very tanky. It feels strong, which is nice. And then, like I said, if you're in control of a fight, you feel good. Keep hitting that Assassin's Scourge for the extra damage. It does a lot of damage. Now, in terms of the 1-bar ultimate, you have some options here. I like In-Cap Strike for single target boss fights. This does very strong damage as well, but it also gives us 20% more damage for 6 seconds, okay? So you need to think about this. You want to first cast your In-Cap Strike and then cast something like a Relentless Focus, the Assassin's Scourge bow, to just maximize that damage completely, right? Because that bow proc will then hit for 20% more damage. So make sure you're thinking about how you use this. Don't just use it immediately when it's off, when it's up. Use it kind of smartly with your other abilities. You can do In-Cap Strike into a heavy attack. Your heavy attack is going to then buff the Relentless Focus. Now, that is single target, right? So if you want to clear your way through a dungeon, or you're like grinding champion points, grinding experience, then I would recommend an AoE ultimate, something like Soul Tether from the Siphoning skill line or Flawless Dawnbreaker from the Fighters Guild skill line. That will be very strong. But for a single target focus, definitely check out In-Cap Strike. That is from the Assassination skill line, so we do get some extra passives from that. And that is the physical damage morph, so that's what I recommend in this case. All right, so that covers the easy 1-bar setup for the Stam Nightblade. What if you want to make this a 2-bar setup? You definitely can. So for that case, all I would recommend is a bow. Any bow is fine. You can use a bow of agility. You can use a New Moon Acolyte bow. You can even use a Maelstrom bow if you happen to have that. The only important thing about your back bar bow, once you add this to the build, is that it's infused. You can do a stamina restore enchant, or you can do a weapon damage enchant. Now, if you do the weapon damage enchant, your sustain won't be quite as good, but you'll have much more damage. You'll have about 5.5k weapon damage when this is fully procced. And that's for any bow, not just the Maelstrom bow. So definitely recommend that. In terms of the skills, not too much is going to change. I do recommend moving your Dark Shade to the back and then just having something like an Execute here. So you can run Reverse Slice on the front bar. That's from the 2-hand skill line. That's the second to last ability. That's an AoE Execute. So you can run that. You can also run the Assassination Execute from the Nightblade skill line. Either one is fine. I just recommend a Execute on your front bar since you have more room for that. Then we're going to move Siphoning to the back bar. And then you can run a single target spammable skill. So a couple options for that would be you can run Surprise Attack from the Shadow skill line. That'll give you some nice passives on your front bar. Or you can run Dizzy Swing as well. With the upcoming changes to, potentially heavy attacks and off balance, this could be actually very strong. So Dizzy Swing from the 2-handed skill line, that's the first ability that you get from 2-hander. That sets an enemy off balance. And when you hit them with a heavy attack, you do tons and tons of damage currently. So you might think about that just for your front bar. Single target spammable. And then we're going to have Relentless on the back bar as well. So you can run Fighters Guild ability here on the front bar. Something I would recommend is Ring of Preservation. This gives you bonus weapon damage from the Fighters Guild passives, as well as minor protection, minor endurance, and healing. This is an amazing skill. So you could run this for the extra damage mitigation and healing on your front bar. That'll be a really good option if you want to do the full 2 bars. Then on our back bar, since we are running bow, we're going to run Endless Hail here in this position. This just comes from the bow skill line. This is just extra damage over time. So the thing about the 2-bar setup is it does have more bar swapping, but you're going to do more damage because you have more dots on your back bar. So Endless Hail is going to be great for that. Then you can run Barb Trap. Barb Trap is from the Fighters Guild skill line. Right here, that's the last ability that you get. So this is a single target damage over time. It also gives you the minor force buff, which is going to be good since we have pretty high weapon critical. That means those critical strikes are going to hit for 10% more damage. And then we just have those buffs from the front bar that we move to the back bar. So Dark Shade, Leeching Strikes, and Relentless. On that back bar, either Soul Tether or, like I mentioned, Flawless Dawnbreaker. And that's basically the 2-bar setup. Pretty simple. All right, so that covers both setups. Let's talk about passive abilities next that are important on the Stamina Nightblade. All right, so let's talk about what passives are important. In the Assassination skill line, Master Assassin you don't technically need. You can save 2 points here because we're not using Invisibility or Sneak. Executioner, this is good for some extra sustain, especially if you're using the Assassination Execute ability. Pressure points is going to give you more weapon critical. And then Hemorrhage, we talked about this. Nightblades actually do 10% bonus crit damage. So that's why you want as much weapon critical as possible. This is the passive for that one. Make sure you pick that up. In Shadow, these are extremely important. Refreshing Shadows, you do get bonus recoveries, which is really nice, especially for solo builds. But then Shadow Barrier, this is where you get your defensive passive. Your major resolve buff comes actually from your shadow passive. So anytime you cast a shadow ability, you get that major resolve buff for 6 seconds, and that actually scales up based on how many pieces of heavy armor you have equipped. That's why you want at least 1, preferably 2 heavy armor pieces. So you can see with 2 pieces now on this setup, that buff increases from 6 to 9 seconds. And that's much better, in terms of sustain for your build. This gets procced by Dark Shade. So on the 1-bar setup, having Dark Shade here, you want to technically cast this about every 9 to 10 seconds to keep that defensive buff procced. That's how that's going to work for you. Dark Vigor, you get extra health. That's great. And then Dark Veil just increases the duration of that shadow ability, so that's nice as well. And then Siphoning Catalyst. This is amazing. Pick up this passive. You get 20 extra ultimate when you use a potion. Magicka Flood gives you extra max Magicka on this build since we are running siphoning abilities on both bars. Soul Siphoner, this gives you increased healing on the front bar, which is great. And then Transfer, you do get ultimate back every 4 seconds. So that's why you want to try to use this power extraction at least every 4 seconds or so to get that extra ult gen. Tons of ultimate coming back on this build for sure. Under two-handed, pick up all your passives here. Forceful gives you splash damage. The heavy weapons passive, this is what we talked about where the Maul is going to give you increased penetration. 20% physical penetration up front on your target, so that's very good. Balanced Blade reduces the cost. Yep, these are all good. Obviously, pick up your bow passives if you're deciding to use the 2-bar setup. Medium armor, you don't technically need, like improved sneak. If you're not sneaking, you can save 2 points there, but the rest of these are good, of course. Heavy armor, now since we're only using 2 pieces of heavy, technically you only need the first 3 passives in the heavy armor skill line. So Resolve gives you extra resistance, Constitution, that's health recovery and sustain. Juggernaut gives you 4% max health. So these 3 passives are very useful still. Fighters Guild, I do recommend just picking these up regardless because you get the extra weapon damage, from slotting a Fighters Guild ability. You also get extra ultimates. Mages Guild, Sigic Order, we don't need these technically. Undaunted, if you do have this maxed out, you'll get an extra 4% bonus here on the build from the Undaunted Metal passive. You have to be all the way Undaunted rank 10 for that though. You don't need these at all, no PvP necessary on this build. Of course, you do want your racial passives. We talked about these. And then Alchemy Medicinal Use, that will make your potions last as long as possible. Quickly, let's jump into champion points here. In the green tree, 37 Warlord, 31 Sprinter, 56 Tenacity. Now, this may be changing based on the PTS changes currently. Now, I really like running heavy attacks on this build, but if this changes to restore only light attack sustain, then I would probably move some of these, maybe put some more into your stamina recovery. But currently 56 into Tenacity, 27 Healthy, 27 Arcanist, 43 Mooncalf, 40 into Shadow Ward, 9 into Tumbling. In the blue tree, 23 into Blessed, 66 Master at Arms. Keep in mind, for the 1-bar setup, which is what we're on currently, we're just doing single target or AoE damage. We have no damage over time. 63 into Physical Weapon Expert. This will pump up those heavy attacks, so you can potentially weave, heavy attack ability, and do tons and tons of damage. Look at that, 30% more damage. And this does affect your light attacks as well, but we know light attacks might be nerfed significantly. 56 into Mighty, 28 Piercing, 34 Precise Strikes, 0 currently into Thaumaturge. If you do run the 2-bar setup, since you do have 2 damage over time abilities, I would just take a little bit from both of these. So I would knock down Master at Arms and Physical Weapon Expert to about 50, 40-ish each, and then put those points into Thaumaturge because that's going to buff your Volley and your Barb Trap if you're running the 2-bar setup. Red CP is not going to change regardless of the build, so 72 Ironclad, 1 Medium Armor, 49 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 28 into Thick-Skinned, 15 into Quick Recovery, and 56 Bastion. This is very important for buffing both the Brawler Shield and the Damage Shield enchant, so make sure you drop some points here. Last but not least, let's talk about the outfit style. If you are curious about this look here, this is a combination of Redoran light armor helmet. So that's the hat style. Then for the body pieces, that's going to be the Outlaw style. That's over here, so Outlaw Jack. Then we have the same thing, Outlaw legs, shoulders, feet, hands. And then the waist is actually different. The waist was the skull here. Which one was that? That's the Fang Lair belt. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up the 1-bar setup for Stamina Nightblade. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, of course, don't forget to crush that like button. It really does help out the channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well for more ESO updates, guides, and builds. I publish those every week here on YouTube. So make sure you hit that subscribe button with notifications turned on so you don't miss anything. If you're interested in supporting the channel, click on that join button for more info. And in the comment section, let me know what kinds of builds you would like to see next. Are you liking the 1-bar setups? Do you want to see more fully fleshed out solo builds, more PvP builds? Let me know what you guys want to see, and I'll do my best to make it happen. As always, you all are amazing. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. Hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you around in the next video.